chapter number 9. Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yoga. Strategically, this is placed right in the middle of the Gita. And content-wise, it will teach us some of the most pure aspects of God and the relationship between us human beings with the Supreme in its most comprehensive and its most pure notion. General outline of this chapter, we will say that here you will see God is beyond good and evil, even above virtue. Normally in our life we think of virtue as very important or a high value. Here we say you are going beyond virtue, beyond good and bad. So there is an aloofness in the nature of God here. Also Vishnu and as an avatar, Krishna, all these anthropomorphic or humanized aspects are all effaced and they merge into a comprehensive and pure notion of Absolute. So Absolute or God is without form here, Nirakara. Then in the verse 5 we will see a mutual interdependence between phenomenal and noumenal. That is also cancelled out. Phenomenal means what we are seeing with our senses, this world of name and form and relationships. And noumenal is what we can't see with our senses, but which we can intuitively understand, which is abstract. That reality and this reality, they are both cancelled out to get a neutral and absolute notion of God. And then the wisdom of Absolute alone can emancipate. We have rituals and we have wisdom. But for emancipation, we need wisdom. So this aspect will also be emphasized. And also this is an open way which does not exclude anyone. Unlike religions which bar their doors to certain kinds of people, in the Gita he says as long as a person is willing to change his attitude, nobody is barred from changing any time and nobody is excluded. So this Catholicity and wide openness of the Gita is unique among religious scriptures of the world. And finally we get the highest teaching in the verse 34 of this chapter, which is also the center of the Gita. And the same verse is repeated in the 18th chapter, which shows that it could be considered as one of the central doctrines. If it is possible to consider any doctrine as a central teaching of the Gita, this particular verse 34 can be considered as a central teaching. Now in the dialectics of a student and a teacher, or a guru and a shishya, there are times when the shishya becomes silent, has to listen, has to ponder, and has to give every bit of his attention to what is coming from the teacher. This is especially true when something very secret or something very profound has to be transmitted. So there is what is known as the parasparya to be established, the bipolarity to be established. The mind of the teacher should not consider that the student is carping, is finding fault with me. And the student should not consider that the teacher is confusing me. So there is a perfect bipolarity established. And in that bipolarity of relationship, intimate relationship, you find that this wisdom value can be transmitted. So such a state is achieved between Krishna and Arjuna in this chapter. Krishna alone speaks, Arjuna is only listening. And the first verse, Idam te guhyatamam pravakshyami anasuyave jnanam vijnana sahitam yajñātva mokshayase asubhat. It says anusuyave. Asuya means mistrust or jealousy. And anasuya means one who has no mistrust, who has no jealousy. So that stumbling block or that obstacle has been removed. And so there is an establishment of total trust between both of them. And based on this trust, Krishna says, I shall declare to you this profound secret which will lead to your moksha, which will liberate you from all evils, ashubhat. And this knowledge has two aspects, the pure aspect and the applied aspect or practical aspect. That we have seen earlier in chapter 7 also. Krishna spoke of jnana and vijnana, pure knowledge and practical knowledge, its application, or theory and practice. So both these aspects are going to be elaborated by Krishna. He calls it Rajavidya Rajaguhyam. Rajavidya means royal science, and Rajaguhyam means a crowning secret. In which sense is this a secret? It can be understood by the initiated. It cannot be understood by a person who has not purified himself, who has not disciplined himself, who has not made certain effort. For such a person this will not be understood. So in that sense it is a secret. Not that it is not to be told to people, but it will be understood only by a person who has made effort and has taken pains to contemplate. An example we can give is Einstein's theories of relativity. Common man cannot understand it. Person has to go through the discipline of physics and learn the formulas and learn mathematics, and then the theory becomes clear. Similarly here too, a person has to go through some yogic discipline, has to undergo some purification, has to train his mind, and once he has done that, he is able to easily grasp this teaching. And this is pavitram, means it will purify, and it is uttamam, means superior. Pratyaksha avagamam. Pratyaksha means that which we can see with our eyes. Aksha means eye. Pratyaksha means that which is before our eyes, which we can objectifiably verify. We can actually see it objectively. Dharma means conforming to right living. And susukham kartukam, very easy to live. And avyayam, which will never decrease. Even a little bit of this knowledge will stay with you, and it will never decrease. So this is the glory of this teachings. That is why he has called it as a Rajavidya, a royal science. After giving us the glory of this science, he straight away takes us to the other extreme and speaks about those people who do not have faith, who don't have Shraddha. Ashraddhana Purushaha. That means wholehearted faith affiliation. It is not a lukewarm bhakti that is required here. It has to be wholehearted and quite intense. That is Shraddha. If you have the right Shraddha, then with this Shraddha, full faith in this way of living, aprapya mam nivartante mrityu sansara vartamani. So men without wholehearted faith affiliation to this way of right living, O burner of foes, not attaining to me, return to the path of mortality and cyclic repetition of existence. Earlier also in the last chapter we were given these two paths for us. For the path of moksha, a human being leaves this cyclic repetition which becomes tiresome after a while, and a person wants a release. And the other path is the path where a person comes back. He has to repeat the cycle. So the way to get out of the cycle is this wholehearted faith affiliation. And following this dharma, this way of right living with wholeheartedness, wholehearted faith, this will take you to the Lord, will merge you with the Supreme. And once you are merged with the Supreme, there is no more coming back to the paths of mortality and cyclic repetition. Maya tattam idam sarvam jagad avyakti murtina matsthani sarva bhutani nachaham teshu avastitaha. Now the unraveling of the mystery of the Absolute begins from this verse. So it is a formless Brahman as a central and important entity in the Gita. It says, by me all this world is pervaded, my form unmanifested. All beings have existence in me, and I do not have existence in them. So this is a paradoxical wonder, and it will tax the mind to imagine how this relationship could exist between God or the Absolute and His own manifestation, His own creation. He says all beings existing in the Lord, but the Lord does not exist in them. So it is a ruler-ruled kind of relationship, is one way of understanding it. It is a subtle relationship, and it does not yield to logic. It cannot be solved by our normal logic. One other example is of Zeno's paradox. In Greece there was a thinker called Zeno who made many paradoxes which cannot be solved by logic. For instance, his riddle about the person who is running. He says he can never reach the destination according to Zeno's paradox, because when he runs half the distance, he still has half the distance to cover. When he runs the next half, he will find he still has half more to cover. So like that you can keep on imagining that he will always have half a distance to cover. He can never reach his destination. So this is a Zeno's paradox. So similarly we can apply that paradox to this relationship between the Absolute and the manifestation also, that all beings are existent in the Lord, but the Lord is not existent in them. And formless Absolute we say because if he is all-pervading, if he is everywhere, then how can he have a form? If you have a form, the form is limited in time and space. It has to be in one particular place at one particular time. But if you think God is everywhere, then naturally there cannot be a form. And further, beings do not exist in me. Behold my status as a divine mystery. Further, myself remaining that urge behind beings, I bear them but do not exist in them either. The same paradoxical idea is continued here. And we must also remember that Krishna has no ego as such. This pronoun me and I is used only for a literary purpose, only for our understanding. As such, we have to think of the Absolute without any form and all-pervading. Yatha akasho sthito nityam vayuhu sarvatra go mahan tatha sarvani bhutani matsthani iti upadharaya. As the great expanse of air filling all space has its basis in pure extension, thus you should understand all existences have their basis in me. If you look at Akasha, means space, which is extending all over, and in that fully extending space, we have air. Air fills that space. Similarly, all existence have their basis in me. This world that we see, these galaxies that we see, these systems that we see, solar system, etc. What is the basis of it all? The basis of all is the Absolute, here addressed as me. Krishna calls it me, but he is referring to the Absolute, which is all-pervading, without any particular form, yet is the basis of all forms. Sarva bhutani kaunteya pragritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punastani kalpadau visrajami aham. The same idea of cyclic nature, throwing up, emanating and withdrawing in the cyclic ways of time according to the kalpas. According to Hindu cosmology, we have the kalpas and the yugas. It's mentioned here in the Gita, 4,320,000,000 years. That is one kalpa, made up of 1,000 yugas. So these huge cosmic cycles are constantly operating, and with each cosmic cycle, nature creates everything. And at the end of the cosmic cycle, everything is withdrawn back into the self. By virtue of my nature, I emanate again and again the whole aggregate of beings, subject as they are to the necessary compulsion of nature. Nature has a compulsive force. People are helplessly pushed into situations because of the compulsion of nature. But the Absolute that is transcending it all is different. So that is the aloofness of witnessing, which is unaffected by action. This is the actions of nature, but the spirit that is transcending these nature modalities, that is just a witnessing presence. It is aloof, and it is never affected by all these actions, all these emanation and various activities that are going on and the dissolution that happens. That does not affect the Absolute. Further, these works do not bind me, O winner of wealth, for I am seated, seemingly indifferent, unattached to these actions. With me presiding, nature gives birth to both the movable and the immovable entities. Because of this, O son of Kunti, this moving world revolves. See, in chemistry we have something called a catalyst. Presence of the catalyst makes the reaction take place, but the catalyst does not involve itself in the reaction. But its presence is necessary to make the reaction take place. Similarly, the Absolute too is there. Its presence makes the whole of nature function, but it is not affected by the nature. It is remaining unaffected. The foolish who misunderstand me because of my adopting the human form. So here the Gita criticizes the puerile, the childish and the unintelligent ways of relating to the Absolute. So this is regarding spiritual life. And in Hinduism, among the Pandits, we have so much of arguments about Saguna Archana and Nirguna Brahman. Saguna means with form, with attributes, and Archana is worshipping God with certain forms and attributes. There is a deity with all kinds of gunas. And the other is meditating on the Nirgun Brahman, Brahman which has no gunas. Here puja is a stepping stone to our discipline, stepping stone to our mind becoming more and more pure, more and more intelligent, and more active and alert. Because the childish or puerile or lazy forms cannot be tolerated in this absolutism. Any lazy form of sadhana or any childish form will not be tolerated. And so it is said that the foolish misunderstand me because of my adopting the human form, ignorant as they are of my being that is beyond as the Lord of all beings. So it clearly gives philosophical emphasis here, saying that the true nature of God is an absolute formless being which cannot be limited to a form. It cannot be a static form. It is a dynamism that is independent, that is ever present, ever alert, and ever fresh, ever new, which has no age, which has no decrease, which has no affection. It is not affected by anything. It is ever pure. Of frustrated hope, of frustrated deeds, empty of wisdom, non-discriminating, like malignant titans and demons, submitting themselves to a nature of confounding values. This is what happens to people who take the other path, the childish path, or whose minds are not very clear, the lazy forms. They don't have the intensity of sadhana. They will experience the frustration of hope because their ideas are misdirected. Their understanding is not clear, so empty of wisdom, non-discriminating, etc., etc. This is the converse position of the Mahatmas. Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim pragritim ashritaha bhajanti ananya manaso nyatva bhutadim avyayam. But those of great self, the Mahatmas, affiliated to my divine nature, adore me with mind exclusive of all extraneous interests. Again and again, Gita being a yoga shastra, treating the external world as only an adjunct, not the essentially real. Instead you go to the essence, exclusive of extraneous interests, the unexpended primal source of all beings, and that is unexpended. Avyayam comes again and again in the Gita as never decreasing or unexpended, imperishing, which cannot be exhausted, which can never be spent. It is everlasting. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavritaha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Always singing praises of me. So every possible value in the contemplative context is rich with the presence of the Absolute. No need to idolize or idealize one particular value. This is the whole idea. When you take an absolutist stand, that absolute you see shining in every value that we have in this world. So you don't limit yourself to any particular idol or idealize only one particular value. Always singing praises of me, ever striving firm in vows, and saluting me devotedly, they are ever united in worshipful attendance. Others also sacrificing with the wisdom sacrifice, unitively, dualistically, as also in many ways facing universally, everywhere, worshipfully attend on me. Wisdom sacrifice means the jnana yajna. What we are doing now is a jnana yajna. If we sit and study the Gita, ponder in its meaning and try to understand and apply it, that is a jnana yajna. And when he says facing universally everywhere, that means that there is no particular spot, there is no place that is special. It is seen as a universal value. Spurred by the love of truth, no place, event, object outside the pale of the Absolute. Because of the love of truth, such a thinker begins to see in every situation there is a spark of truth. If it is not truthful, it will not be able to exist. Truth is behind everything that exists. And to be able to be in tune with that truth, then you are seeing the Absolute everywhere. There is nothing outside Brahman. It is everywhere. Sarva khalvidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman. That is an absolutist approach. But if we take one step below, then we say ritualism, theology, religion, cosmology, These are the various approaches. And here in the 16th verse, we see all these various approaches are all being united into one single idea of the Absolute. Here again when he says I, the personal pronoun is only a literary device. I, the ritual action, I, the sacrifice, I, the ancestral oblation, I, the potent medicinal herb, I, the holy formula, I also the melted butter, I, the fire, I, the offering. So this is the context of rituals. In the ritual we say oblation, we see the herb, we see the holy formula, the mantra, we see the ajyam, that is the ghee, and we see the agni, the fire, and we say hutam, we are offering. So all these individual items of our sacrifices, in all these there is just one truth in all of it, and one value, then that is the self. From this verse to 20th, that is the 16th to 20th, these are marking the limits or amplitude within which the all-comprehensive value called the Absolute swings. So when you are thinking of an Absolute, you have to always mark the two boundaries, the extreme poles between which the whole range of the absolutist values can swing. So in 7th chapter we had Bhumir, Anilo, Vayu, etc. starting from earth to Prayantakale, what happens after death. That was the whole range of values. Here too we have another series when he says, I am father of the world, the mother, the supporter, the grandsire, Pitamaha, Vedyam, Pavitram, the purifier, Omkar, the syllable Om, and the Vedas, Rik, Sama and Yajur. So these are the different aspects of divinity. When we talk of Mata, Dhata, Pita and Pitamaha and the syllable Om and the Vedas, all these different aspects are being reconciled. That whichever way you take, whichever method is used, behind it we have the same one self or one absolute. Gatir bharta prabhu sakshi nivasaha sharanam suhrit. So this is a synthesis also when he says I am the goal, the supporter, the Lord, the witness, the abode, the refuge, the friend, the becoming, the dissolution, the ground of being, ontological basis and never expended seed. Sthanam nidhanam, ontological basis means that we are fixed on this earth, that is the ontological basis. And avyayam bijam, never expended seed. This is a method to reconcile the different methods in our practices, because the idea of the Gita is unity, unifying. It's an Advaita Shastra. So it wants ultimately only one principle to reign as the supreme principle. And so all the trends that were existing at the time of its composition, we see that the author is trying to link all those trends and put them in line with one absolute, summing up all the various attitudes into one master attitude, one master knowledge, or one master supreme. I radiate heat and I reign, I withhold and I send forth. I am immortality and death, and also being and non-being, O Arjuna. See, here also you say being and non-being, that is a philosophical idea. I hold and send forth, that is radiate heat and rain, that brings us to the level of nature itself, elemental nature. So the opposites are all cancelled out. Where does the opposites meet? If you take two opposites as two extreme ends of a pole, they meet at the center. And the meeting point in the center is neither this nor that. It is neutral. Similarly, the Absolute too is a neutral center point where all the opposites can come and meet, itself being transcendental and neutral. Now the next set of verses, verse 20-21, they refer to Vedic form of ritualistic worship, which Gita revalues. When he says, knowers of the three Vedas, Soma drinkers, purified from sin, worshipping by sacrifices, pray of me the way to heaven. As again and again we say, Veda takes you to heaven. Veda's goal, Vedic life or Vedic rituals or Vedic thinking is always to heaven. They attain the holy world of Indra, enjoying divine feasts in heaven. So heaven can be considered as a glorious form of all that we can enjoy in earth, magnified several fold will become heaven, place where you have great comforts and enjoyments. They, having enjoyed the expansive heaven world, their merit exhausted, enter the world of mortality, thus conforming to the righteous notions implied in the three Vedas. Desiring desirable objects, they obtain values which come and go. So there is a relativistic aspect in the Vedas. Vedas are relativistic, so there is always this coming and going and rising and falling. Merit takes you high, and when merit is exhausted, you feel you are come down. So this attitude has to be revalued by the Vedantic way of thinking. In the Vedantic way of thinking, there is no such fluctuation. Everything is going very constantly. And the goal is not heaven, but the goal is moksha, or merging with the Absolute. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupasate tesham nitya abhiyuktanam yogakshema vahamyaham. So this self-realization, which is the real goal of wisdom, that is to realize ourselves. But religious life brings in piety and anxiety for security. When anxiety for security and piety, feeling of holiness, these thoughts come in, then a mind is not looking for self-realization anymore. If you're reading a book like the Gita, Gita is taking us to self-realization. We have to realize our own true nature and not get caught up in the pieties and the anxiety for security, where God is going to be the provider of your security. Rather, God is the source of your self-knowledge. That is wisdom. To those persons who, meditating on me to the exclusive of all else, worshipping me, ever established unitively, I bring that solace of the unitive way of yoga. Unlike the Vedic way which we just saw, where we are talking of heaven and looking for the benefits of enjoyment, here is the case of a person who is interested in self-realization. So such a person is meditating on the Lord to the exclusion of all else. Again, we have seen elsewhere ekantika bhakti, one-pointed devotion, and total bipolarity between an aspirant and the object of his worship. There is no third triangular situation. There is no other wish, just this direct bipolarity. And this direct bipolarity brings the solace of unitive way of yoga, yoga kshema. Ye api anya devata bhakta yajante shraddhaya anvitaha te api mam eva kaunteya yajanti avidhi purvakam. So Catholic or so wide is the understanding of the Gita that it says that even those who worship other gods with faith, they in fact worship myself, though not conforming to orthodox rules. Not according to vidhis, but avidhi purvakam. If you are an orthodox person, you will go according to the vidhis. Your prayer is full of faith, but the affiliation is wrong. Even that will eventually take you on the right path. In verse 20 that we just read, there the prayer is wrong, but the affiliation is right. Here the prayer is full of faith, but the affiliation is wrong. So therefore it is necessary to have both the right affiliation and the right prayer. Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha. I am indeed the enjoyer and also the Lord of all sacrifices. But they fall indeed who do not understand me according to first principles. Here you can say that the affiliation is to be brought through wisdom and not just faith, but faith along with wisdom. Faith can be blind, blind faith can distract. So you need wisdom, you need knowledge to guide that faith. Otherwise they fall. Fall here means in a contemplative sense. Their contemplative life or their spiritual life will become distracted. So there is again the need for right affiliation. Yanti devavrita devan pitran yanti pitra vitraha bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajino api mam. That is in 25. He says votaries of the divinities go to the divinities. Votaries of the ancestors go to the ancestors. So whatever object a person worships, to that person will go. And his worshippers, my worshippers, come to me. So the devotee must be sure that he is offering it to the highest absolute. So whatever simple act we do, we must have in our mind that this is being offered to the highest, to the most supreme. And that will keep the affiliation right. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. Even if you offer a small flower or a fruit or patram, leaf, toyam or water, yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktya upahritam asnami pratya atmanaha. So I accept as being offered with devotion by one who makes the right effort. So this is the simple act that a person in his heart must have the conviction that it is being offered to the highest absolute. So you should have the right bhakti of quality and intensity also, and that will keep the devotion, the path always straight and clear. So even ordinary necessities of life, the simple things of day-to-day life will not hinder or enter into conflict with the way of wisdom. The next verse said, whatever you do, what you eat, what you offer, what you give, what austerity you practice, O Arjuna, do that as an offering to me. Even the ordinary necessary things in our hearts, we can think that we are doing this as an offering to the Lord. And when he says dadasi, what you give, that implies an open generosity rather than mere interest in personal emancipation. Some people get totally caught up with their own emancipation. Rather than that, there is a need for being open and more generous. That is the whole idea of giving. So that attitude helps you in your bipolarity. Shubha Shubha Phala Revam Mokshayashi Karma Bandhanaihi Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma Vimukto Mam Upaishyasi. So this is the greatness of the Gita, that it is indifferent to good and bad. It transcends both good and bad. Therefore, this is a characteristic of something philosophical. In philosophical understanding, we go to the supreme principle, beyond good and evil, beyond cause and effect, beyond all dualities is the supreme, is that one goal which is transcendental. Religious texts will not have such a view that you can go beyond good also. They will stop at the good. You will be liberated from the bonds of action, whether its results are good or evil. Because even good can become a source of bondage. Even good is not the ultimate freedom. The ultimate freedom is going beyond good and evil. Samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dvesho asti na priyaha. Perfect unity of worshipper and worshipped. So he says, I regard all beings equally. To me there is none hateful or dear. They, however, who worship with devotion, they are in me and I am in them. There's another beautiful verse where the unity of the worshipper and the worshipped is stressed. He says, they are in me and I am in them. So they are completely united in their worship. And again the idea that there is none hateful or dear. So that is more a social consideration, that man makes certain people dear and certain people hateful. But in the lives of the Absolute there are no such divisions, there is only equality. Now he takes us to another set of verses where we find again the Gita is rising in its value as a great scripture. When he says, even one of very evil action should worship me with a devotion exclusive of all else, he should be accounted to be good all the same, merely by the fact that he has a properly settled determination. Samyak vivasitaha. Even that little spark of the Absolute comes into a person's life, like the little leaven that leaveneth the lump. It brings a transformation, like a spark that can bring a conflagration, that can start a huge fire just by a tiny spark. So just a little devotion that brings a complete change, then the evil gets completely removed. Nobody is condemned or nobody is excluded. Anybody at any time has the choice of changing and becoming equal in status to the best of devotees. He is not considered in any way inferior to any other devotees, but he should have that proper determination. Shipram bhavati dharmatma
shashvachantim nigacchati kaunteya prati janihi
name bhakta pranashyati. Instantaneously he becomes established in his own right nature. It's instantaneous, so there's no waiting or purgatory or anything like that. It is an instant change, and he will enter into eternal peace. Believe me in all confidence, O son of Kunti, that one affiliated to me with fidelity knows no destruction. Now this is referring to the prevailing language of the time when it calls inferior people and sinful people. Those two who resort to me for refuge, whoever they might be, whether women, workers as well as farmer merchants, all of sinful origin, they too shall attain the supreme goal. Modern people will not like this so much. Rajaguru says here, this is not the opinion of the author of the Gita, but it is just the prevailing language of the time when certain sections of people were considered as sinful origin or inferior. The upper two castes were the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, and they were custodians of the culture and they were the interpreters of the highest teachings. So they were kept separately. But this is the way it was in those days. But even those people are fully eligible to attain the supreme goal. They can also have a right to study and a right to attain the supreme goal. How much more than the pure Brahmanas, as also the devoted royal sages, having reached this transient joyless world, do you worship me? Asukham lokam. It's interesting that the world is described as Asukha lokam. And bhajasvimam, do you worship me? And that worshipping me takes us to the final verse, which we say can be considered as the central teaching of the Gita. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktvevam atmanam matparayanaha. So when he says manmana bhava, become one with me, that is like the Upanishadic teachings. Aham brahmasmi, and the Brahman knower becomes Brahman himself. By knowing Brahman, we become Brahman. So that unity is spoken of. When he says madbhakto, there the idea is a religious idea, a religious attitude of devotion. Madhyaji means the idea of sacrifice, ritualistic context. And namaskurumam, even the simple thing of bending your body, the overt form of body behavior, even that. With all these forms you can unite yourself. So mind in such a state loses its egotism, loses its sense of agency, that I am doing, I am enjoying, I am knowing. And this attitude begins to show in our outward actions. So when he said, let us be united, manmana bhava means that our consciousness gets dissolved. It's like an individual getting dissolved in the totality. If you take a glass jar and immerse it in the ocean and then break it, what happens to the water within and the water outside? They merge. Similarly, the ego is just a boundary we have built around ourselves, and it keeps us thinking all the time that we are the doers, we are the enjoyers. But in this attitude, when you say manmana bhava, that sense of ego is lost, and along with it goes the sense of agency, and that brings the transformation, the merger of a person in that supreme consciousness or the absolute consciousness. So this is what the Gita gives us as the final center teaching. This verse comes right in the middle of the Gita, and it is repeated again in the 18th chapter. Because it's repeated twice, it shows that it has an importance. So, you shall surely come to me, your supreme goal, none other than me. So that is the goal. And these are the means to attain that goal by a proper affiliation, by channelizing all thoughts and words and deeds, and all the rituals and all the actions and all the devotion into one absolute highest, and then conceiving of that highest as a nirguna, having no form, a formless, all-pervading absolute. But later on in the Gita we find that this high ideal is compromised. We are given many alternatives to a person who cannot reach, who cannot think of the absolute in an abstract way. We are given concessions, and the formal is also accepted. So Gita does not deny anything. It accepts all, and yet it points to the highest teaching. If you have the ability to abstractly relate, then it is better. If you don't, then it's fine to have the other forms also, as long as you affiliate it to the absolute. That affiliation is important. So whatever forms we have, we direct it to the absolute. And think of the goal also as that absolute, to which you want to merge or you want to unite yourself with, becoming one with. How? Through wisdom, through knowledge, through knowing and understanding. So the moment you know, you become that. You become what you know. So the knowledge becomes the medium. And that devotion also must be guided along with this knowledge. Faith also must be guided with this knowledge. So that is how every spiritual discipline that we do, it gains a orientation. With that orientation, you can understand. Because from the other side, grace comes. There is aspiration from the devotee, there is grace from the Lord. So these two, when they come together, we experience spiritual progress. So when that aspiration is genuine and it is rightly affiliated, the grace too is experienced in its right form. If it is not, even then, through an indirect way also, it is still experienced, as it says in the Gita. If we understand, there is no division there. Whatever little form we have adopted here, behind it is the one absolute. This is reevaluating Upanishadic teachings. In the Upanishads, we are always reading about only Brahman. In the Vedas, we have 33,333 gods. But when we come to the Upanishads, they have all been reduced to only one single absolute entity. And Gita, being a part of the Upanishads, tries to revalue all the disjunct practices into one absolutist way, which is unique of Gita itself. So that brings us to the end of chapter 9. If you look at the hope it holds out, it is truly a very generous-minded scripture. It does not exclude anybody. And that is why it is called a Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya, the royal or the sovereign. Just like a royal highway or a royal road can be used by all, similarly this too is a royal way in which all people can tread, knowing that their goal is the same, one goal towards which we are going. And the obstacles are also mentioned. The ashraddha, the lack of shraddha, and the misunderstanding of the nature of Absolute, mistaking the Absolute to be limited to human beings. So these are the stumbling blocks where a devotee can become distracted or fail to understand the profoundness, and it becomes childish, then it becomes immature. Or our problem becomes the lack of initiative, the lack of drive. The mind is cloudy then, confused or not clear. So both these have to be overcome by a positive contemplative pressure. Just like cycling up a slope, constant pressure is applied on the pedals as we move up. Similarly, when we are in a spiritual life, in the sadhana too, we apply a constant, regular, steady application. That is necessary. Idolatry is condemned here. Just believing in an idol is not accepted by the Gita. Instead, it has to be made more mature by knowledge, by proper understanding. The right affiliation will take you to the goal. If you don't have the right affiliation, you will miss the path. See, when you are devoted, what is the object to which you are devoted? What is this being to whom you are devoted? So that you should have a notion, what is known as normative notion. Your notion that you have in your mind of the deity should be clear, it should be accurate. Then you have right affiliation. If you don't have the right notion, then you say your affiliation is wrong. Your faith can be very ardent, but your affiliation can be wrong. So these have to be corrected by keeping the right affiliation, the right faith. And then your orientation is absolutely right. So yoga always implies bipolarity. Bipolarity means two poles. At one end you are keeping the absolute, supreme God. At the other end is yourself. How are you going to link yourself with that absolute? You have to make a bridge. That is through knowledge. Devotion means it is feelings. When you are doing bhakti, you are channelizing your feelings along a particular way. It is more emotional. And that has to be balanced by equal amount of reasoning, understanding. Understanding means you should be clear about what is the nature of that absolute. When I talk of God, what is the God like? This God that you are worshipping is not something which is limited to any being or a person or a thing or a place or a time. It is unexpended, avyayam. It is everywhere. It is pervading everything. It is extremely subtle, and therefore it is not easy to grasp it. It cannot be grasped with our senses. It cannot be grasped with our mind, because mind cannot reach it. Mind is limited. Mind is made of concepts, and this is beyond all concepts. How do we attain that? That has to be grasped intuitively. How does intuition come? There has to be a certain amount of grace. You can go up to a certain door and then you have to wait for the door to open. You don't have the key to open certain door. Grace must come from the other side. Grace comes and grace reveals it to you. It's a revelation and it is revealed. So both these must work hand in hand. If you don't have the right affiliation, then you don't go to the right door. So it will not open. If you don't have the right faith, then you don't make it. You are going to the right door, but you don't reach it in time. You need both working together. Then you attain the goal. And what is the goal here? You are merging with the Absolute. This is the beauty of it. Gaining a status of equality now. That is Samadhi experience. When they say Samadhi experience, super consciousness, what is happening to a person then? Then there is no division left. That division is effaced. Now there is no more worshipper and worshipped. That duality has been effaced. Now you are in just one state of absolute merger. Manmana bhava. And that is what pleases the Lord the most. The Lord is not happy to have you always sitting there and begging Him and praying to Him and worshipping. He is saying, Manmana bhava, become one with me. So gain that status of equality with me. By making the right effort, I shall also reward you. I here is personal pronoun. It's a literary device. So it's a principle. And so you attain it. Once you have attained it, what happens then? Then you have got out of the relativistic world. Then you have no more worry about birth and death or any such thing. You attain param gati. You have attained a status of the supreme. You become a jivan mukta. In this life itself, you have overcome death. It doesn't matter to you now whether you are living or dying. You begin to see that this is all part of a phenomenal, nature-bound, cyclic thing that is happening. Everything comes up, then everything goes back. It's been going on for ages, and now you'd say you have gone one step higher than that. That is the goal. It is a worthy goal. He says, this asukha loka. You will never get total happiness in this loka. This loka is asukha loka. So if you want to be sukhi, if you want to be happy, you have to attain that. What is life for? Life is our sadhana. If you think life is for enjoyment, you are in the Vedic path. The Vedic path, people want to think that maximum gain of life is to go to heaven. Heaven means to get the most wonderful life that you can imagine. But the problem with that is, it is a transitory phase. So again you will find one cycle goes and you find you are back to where you were. You have not gained anything unless you become wise. So wisdom is the method to take you to another state of consciousness itself, where you become closer to Absolute, you become closer to God, you become more God-like. Spiritual life means we have to make ourselves divine. We are not interested in sitting and worshipping God. We want to become God-like ourselves. We want to be united with God. Gita takes you on that path. Dualism is constantly revalued to make you experience the unity and still live in the world and work with your inner being related with God. So your whole attitude changes, how we live, how we treat life. So this withdrawal from the world and linking
to the Absolute.
This is yoga. Various sadhanas we are performing, that is why it's turning away from the external interest. This is the nirvritti marga. You have to have a method of turning inwards, and that inwardness shows in your outward action. Your inward understanding manifests in your outward actions. That is why elsewhere also in the second chapter he says, what is night for living beings is day for the yogi, and what is day for the yogi is night for other people. So naturally there is a change in attitudes for a yogi. For a spiritual person does not see the world as a normal person does. He sees it in a different way because his mind has been tuned to another value. Gita recommends that path which will take you to the Absolute, which will make you experience the divinity which is already in you. It's in all of us already. See, in the earlier chapter he says, Hriday Tishtati. I reside in the heart of all beings. I am everywhere. That is the boundless way of understanding the Absolute. You are not restricting a certain place and saying God is in this particular place or God is to be approached by certain vidhi. That is an orthodox way. Here he is saying unorthodox. Whatever you say, whatever you do, this itself becomes your rituals. How you walk, your walk is a ritual. Elsewhere they say, my walking is like doing a parikrama around you. My speech is as good as praising you. So every action, every thought, every word becomes an offering to God. Even ordinary day-to-day values. Everything is channeled towards the God. Nothing is kept separate or apart. Everything is the Absolute. God is everywhere. And so everything is made divine. So that is the beauty of this way of understanding. Naturally this way becomes more comprehensive, all-inclusive. And the discipline becomes a little more intense. You have to be more conscious all the time. Because you are not now saying, okay, this is my time for worship. But you are saying every moment, every thought that is pulsating in me, every throb of my heart is my moment of worship. So it becomes constant. Then you are in constant meditation or constant worship. Mam anusmara yudhyacha. Think of me and also fight. So this is the secrets of the yogic way, which when they are practiced, they bring immense benefit to a human being. So first is the faith. That is why this is told to Arjuna only in the 9th chapter, when his faith is totally established. Now there is no doubt in his mind. He has become fully affiliated and he is willing to listen. And after the ground has been prepared, so to speak, after his mind has been fully prepared, After 8 chapters of arguing with him and giving him one argument after another, one logical proof after another, he has become completely convinced. Only after that you find that this teaching is given. And this is confirmed in the Vishwarupa Darshana. Just like in science we have experiment and then proof. In spiritual life you should have an anubhava. You should have an actual experience. When you can see the grace operating, how the divine forces are working in you. So when you get that anubhava, it is confirmed.